Why do you think that your returning to the Philippines will enhance the cause of freedom in the country?
That has been a question that has been asked to me because people think that I'm rather foolish to go back. Primarily, I do believe that we have to show some examples to our people. As Gandhi said, cowardice is infectious, but courage can also be infectious. We must show our people that there are times when we must sacrifice. It's very easy to be here in America. It's easy to become soft in America. Who does not want to enjoy this freedom? But so long as the Filipino people are suffering, I think it would be more meaningful if we can go back there and share that suffering. I do not believe, as I said, in a violent confrontation. I do not believe, as I said, that blood should flow. But who knows that by returning there and willingly sacrifice again imprisonment, I may be able to touch the conscience of Mr. Marcos. And in so doing, we'll be able to dialogue better with him and tell him exactly what some of our people feel. It may be foolish, but why should it be foolish? I'm only one. If I die, then I die, and there's only one to suffer. But so long as each one of us will be willing to take on the struggle, even if I am imprisoned, even if I die in prison, so long as you will continue the struggle and carry the torch, then I think we will have a better Philippines. Rather than have one carrying the torch, we'll have many. And that's my answer.
You will become the next president of the Philippines. What will you do with the U.S. investments or big foreign investments in the Philippines?
That's a very, very good question, because there is a misconception that if the opposition wins in the Philippines, we will kick out all American foreign investments. But why should we do that? Foreign investments are in the Philippines to give employment to our people. We should watch against predatory foreign investors who are exploitative of the Filipino people. But I cannot accept that all foreign investments are exploitative. There are many foreign investments that are helpful to our country because there are many foreign multinationals that have the technology which we do not have. We do not have the technology in digitals and computers. Who will teach us this? The idea is not to kick out foreign investment, but to regulate foreign investment so that it will be mutually beneficial to both countries. Where they become exploitative, they should be extirpated. But where they help the economy, they should be encouraged.
What relationship does the UNIDO party have to the National Democratic Front, who has played a central role in arguing the Filipino people's case against the Marcos dictatorship, and who presently has a base of support of over 10 million.
I do not know the actual relationship today between the United Democratic Opposition in the Philippines and the National Democratic Front. I've said in many of my writings that the National Democratic Front, especially its militant arm, the New People's Army, has been instrumental in many social changes in our country. There may be a difference in ideology and approach, but we are united in one. We are united against the dictatorship. My position is very clear. If we will succeed in overthrowing the dictatorship, we should allow every voice and every idea to ventilate their views in the public market. We should legalize the Communist Party of the Philippines and give them exactly the same forum to expound on their ideas. And once they've expounded their ideas and the Filipino people should opt them, then I think we should, in the spirit of democracy, accept majority rule. I will not accept a dictatorship of the right, much less will I accept a dictatorship of the left. But it should be the Filipino people in the ultimate sense who will judge which ideology and which cause that they should endorse.
You said violence begets violence, so it is just right to use violence against Marcos' regime, inasmuch as it is Marcos' main weapon.
I've always said that Mr. Marcos is the original terrorist. He is right now employing state violence. But if we use violence against him, he will only justify the use of more violence against us. And since he's a more violent man, he has more forces of repression, we will be the loser. In other words, as Gandhi said, if he uses violence against you, do not give him a reason to justify his violence. Because if you're not violent, then before the bar of public opinion and before God, he's the only sinner. One wrong does not right another wrong.
For Filipinos in the U.S., what do you propose for them to do to hasten the dismantling of the dictatorship in the Philippines?
For one, there is really very little that you can do. However, I hope that because the press in our country is controlled, every time you write your people back home, include some clippings that are found in American newspapers about what's happening back home. Do you know that yesterday, the Los Angeles Times had a story. 2,000 demonstrated in Manila. Nuns and priests were bombarded by water cannons. I talked to Manila only this morning. They told me not a single line of the story that has appeared in Los Angeles Times has appeared in Philippine press. Therefore, our people do not know what's happening. There was a clash in Sulu. We knew about it here. But in the Philippines, not a word was said in the newspapers. What can you do, therefore? When you send your monthly remittances, no matter how small, include the clippings so they will be enlightened.
Would you explain the severe poverty in the Philippines? Any alternatives? What are its roots and causes?
There is severe poverty in the Philippines, and this is endemic in the third world. I believe there is a structural defect in our system, as Mr. Osmeña pointed out. But I can only pinpoint to you one specific case. In the budget today, the budget of the national defense is almost 7 billion. And yet, if you add up the budget of education and culture, health and welfare, agrarian reform, and social welfare, they only add up to 6.2 billion. So that 4 major departments that are people-oriented have less budget than the armed force of the Philippines that has become the terrorists of our own people. The soldiers who are supposed to be our guardians have become our custodians. We are spending more money for bullets than for medicine. We're spending more money for tanks than for schoolhouses. We're spending more money for salary of soldiers than the salary of our teachers. That is one of the root causes of our fundamental poverty defect.
What role do you think the Reagan administration will play in the struggle for Philippine freedom?
I think this is a very vital role. President Carter, as you very well know, enunciated human rights policy. And I'd like to state here that beginning 1977, thousands of Filipinos were released from jail because of that Carter human rights policy. And Mr. Marcos was so pressured by the Carter human rights policy that there was a Harkin Amendment in the Congress. And this Harkin Amendment said, any country that consistently violates human rights will not receive American aid. And Mr. Marcos has been very dependent on foreign aid. If the Reagan administration will now turn its back from this policy and will put more emphasis on terrorism as against human rights, this may give a wrong signal to Mr. Marcos. It may only embolden him to carry out more of his repressive measures, because as some officials in the Carter and the Reagan administration have said, they may be violating human rights, but if they are our friends, we do not fight our allies. Now that can be a very wrong signal, and it can have a very adverse effect to our freedom cause.
Do you think Marcos still has a conscience after all this time? How can one reason with a monster?
No, sir. Mr. Marcos is a human being, and Mr. Marcos has a conscience. I may even concede that in his own fashion he thinks he's doing right. It is therefore our duty and our obligation to enlighten him. It is our duty and our obligation to tell Mr. Marcos that maybe he is wrong. But definitely, Mr. Marcos is a human being, and I have not lost hope that we can still reach him in the recesses of his conscience.
Senator Aquino, people who claim to know you before martial law say that if you were elected president, you would have acted exactly, if not worse, than Marcos. Will you comment on this impression? Had 7 years of solitary confinement changed your political attitudes, character, and credibility?
I would like to begin with the first line of the sentence. People who claim to know you before martial law say that you, if you were president, you would act exactly, if not worse, than Marcos. The defect is in the first line. People who claim to know you, they don't know me.
According to the Boston Globe magazine, you call yourself a Christian socialist. Will Christian socialism help poor Filipinos?
What do I mean by Christian socialism? Very simply, Christian socialism means to me an equal opportunity for advancement and the full development of the human being. This means that the poorest person in the land must be given the equal opportunity for education. Not all men are created equal in their talents. Some are more brilliant than others. But we must give every citizen of the Republic the equal right and equal opportunity to quality education. That's number one. Number two, the Christian socialist believes that the great legitimizer of government is the ballot, not the bullet. And therefore, because we believe in the ballot, we believe in a majority rule. So that if the majority should opt and should win in a contest, then the minority should accept the majority mandate. But we put equality, that the majority, even if it wins, must respect minority rights. Number 3, we do not believe in the exploitation of man by man, meaning we do not believe in unbridled capitalism where the rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer. In a developed country in America, you may have capitalism. But in a country like the Philippines with very meager resources and a developing economy, we must harness our meager economy and maximize their benefit. And therefore, there should be centralized economic planning, and the government must actually give the direction as to prevent any overlap. Example, in the Philippines today, because it's profitable to have condominiums and profitable to have office buildings, all the millionaires in the Philippines are putting up all of their money in buildings and condominiums to the detriment of our industrial development. They go where the quick buck is. I believe that we should go where the long-range interest of the Filipino people is. Finally, I do not believe in the monopoly of basic industries. Why should one family monopolize one electric company in the Philippines? Or why should one family monopolize the ownership of one airline company in the Philippines? Or why should one company monopolize the telephone company in the Philippines? Since the government is funding all of this to begin with, these families are borrowing from government institutions and must depend on government guarantees. Then I say, let the government own them and let the people share in the profit. Christian socialism, therefore, is nothing more than democracy.
Since the forthcoming presidential election is a mockery once again and an insult to the people, may it not be fairly game if the lone presidential oppositionist to Marcos be Pascual Racoyal? And in a more serious vein, since you are not going to run for the May presidential election, who is your personal choice to run against Marcos?
I think I will join those who propose Mr. Racoyal.
Marcos retain his power if U.S. aid is withheld or decreased?
Yes, for a time he will be able to retain his power, but I believe that if the U.S. will continue to whittle down aid to him, he will not last as long as he will last if there is aid.
Marcos is said to be able to get access with the maps to the gold treasure the Japanese hid in the Philippines. What do you know about this? Could be one reason why Marcos would like to continue to be president of the Philippines.
I don't know about the gold of Mr. Marcos, and he has not told me about the maps that the Japanese left behind.
We don't want you to go back yet. Why don't you wait just like Khomeini did in Iran?
I'm only 48. Khomeini is 78. That would be a 30-year wait. I don't think we should do that. I do not believe that it is within our reason to wait. We can accelerate time. What I'm trying to say is this. We should not depend on one man. We should depend on all of us. All of us are expendable in the cause for freedom. And therefore I say, stand up now and be a leader. And when all of us are leaders, we will expedite the cause of freedom.
What is the true story of Governor Lingad's murder?
I do not yet know the full facts of the murder of Governor Lingad. I was talking to the daughter of Governor Lingad last night, and I received certain information about the surroundings or about the antecedents or the facts surrounding the case. We are still looking into it. Our people in the Philippines are still trying to pinpoint the perpetrators of the dastardly crime. Suffice it to say that Governor Lingad died in the highest line of duty. And it's unfortunate that when he died, for 2 hours nobody would even touch his body. But in time, I think, our people will be able to appreciate the sacrifices that this man did at a time when nobody or hardly anybody wanted to pick up the cudgel.
Since you came over to the United States, have you yourself appealed or sought U.S. government's assistance in restoring democracy in the Philippines?
No, sir. I have never appealed to any American official or to any American to help us in our freedom. I believe that if we Filipinos cannot fight for our freedom, we do not deserve it. We should not depend on the Americans. We should depend on ourselves. All I told the Americans is, we are not asking you a single cent in our freedom struggle. All we are asking you is not to give, quadruple your military aid to the dictator so that our job will not be that much harder. The only thing I ask them is, desist from helping him and let us free ourselves.